Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Talking City podcast from the Manchester Evening News. I'm Tyrone Marshall, hosting today, joined by Simon Bajkowski, stinking of coffee stains all over his trousers, ever the pro. How are you, Si?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of represent a worse week than Manchester City, I suppose. It's rubbish tournament. They didn't want to win it anyway, I heard.
No, just basically pre-season.
Don't go to their school. No.
This is it. Manchester City have left the Club World Cup with the equivalent of coffee stains all over their trousers. It's fair to say. The last time we did a podcast, I think I started it by asking you, are City back? And you said, yes, definitely.
Yes.
Maybe not. Something around that, maybe.
They are back.
But they're not back, are they?
They are back. Right back to
back in Manchester.
Sort of December 2024 when they were losing every week. It was a strange game against Al-Hilal. And they've sort of... It felt like a result that will go down in the annals of the Club World Cup. And I think Gianni Infantino, the FIFA president, tweeted like the new era is here, or the new world order is here, or it's a result that makes people think, maybe the Saudi Pro League isn't as terrible as everyone thinks, and maybe Manchester City is still pretty bad. It was just a strange game, wasn't it? If you're putting it in terms of last season, it was a bit like the Sporting Lisbon game early in their malaise last year, because they were 1-0 up at half time and they should have been like 4-5-0 up. They played really well, had loads of chances, and then the second half started and it was like, oh yeah, we're rubbish and we're just going to let you score at will. And was it 2-2 by 90 minutes?
Yeah.
And then 3-2 Al-Hilal, 3-all, 4-3 Al-Hilal, game over. With an incredible celebration, wasn't it, from that fella in the stands?
Oh, yeah. I don't know what that was.
That is just got to be memed forever, I think.
Yeah, it was. It was remarkable scenes. Right. Lots of remarkable scenes. That Sporting game is probably a good comparison because, like you say, City were even more dominant against Sporting.
Yeah.
And then as soon as they were exposed once, they utterly fell apart. And the same thing kind of happened. And it was those familiar takes, wasn't it? That they create enough chances to win probably 2, 3, 4 games. And then as soon as one thing goes wrong, everything goes wrong. And they just got so badly exposed.
Yeah, it felt like a game that they were in full control of to as soon as the second half started. They just never got that control back, did they? It was, they got themselves back in the game, and there was that, I think was it 3-3 when Haaland had that sort of second ball from a corner that nearly crossed the line.
2-2, that was.
It was like goal line technology was needed.
Normal time.
So they could have won it.
Yeah, and that was a Kanji hit the post.
Yeah,
hit the post.
Yeah.
To Haaland.
But at the same time, it would have felt like they'd kind of fumbled their way through if they'd got through because of the chances and the goals they'd given up. Not that they wouldn't have deserved to go through, but it was just not the kind of, they bossed Juventus, didn't they? They absolutely bossed them from start to finish. And this was from half time. It was a basketball match, which Pep famously does not like.
Yeah.
Unless I think he's quite a fan of basketball, isn't he?
He likes basketball during basketball.
Yeah.
Just less so during football.
Yeah.
Kind of fair enough.
Understandable.
Yeah. You wouldn't want football at basketball.
No. I wondered if basketball do this out. It's like a football match. This is rubbish.
Like when it's just a bit more defensive and like one team.
When there's a low block going on.
One team dominant and controlling it and just passing it amongst themselves. I'm not sure if that's an NBA thing, but maybe we can introduce it. We did say after that Juve game, the one note of caution was that Juve had used that game to make lots of changes. It didn't feel like Juve's strongest team. What I should say with Al-Hilal as well is I don't think we're quite on New World Order, but they're clearly a decent team. I thought they were really impressive in the group stages, but City were so comfortable for 45 minutes. It should have been at least 3-0 at half time. They should have been out of sight. Let's talk about the attack first, because it feels like that's kind of one of the positives from the tournament. They scored loads of goals, 14, I think, off the top of my head. Should probably have scored more. Is it a concern they didn't score more? Is it just one of those things? Because they've looked pretty good going forward in this tournament, haven't they?
I think it always has to be a concern when they don't score more and they lose, just because you always point to it and say, if you'd scored more, you wouldn't have lost.
That game, yeah.
And I think it has to be a concern that, Savinho and Jeremy Doku started again, and Doku's been very good this tournament. Savinho's been quite good, but the question now for them is, can you score and assist consistently? Can your output be consistent enough that, we're not talking about your shortcomings in the final third? And it was, I think Doku played okay again. Savinho had that one chance that was a really well saved from Bono, but again, you're sort of like, are there question marks again over those two? Because you need people to take your chances, don't you?
Yeah, you do. I mean, we were raving about Doku, weren't we, after the group stages, and then kind of disappeared a little bit. I mean, wingers are always going to have games like that, but it's very obvious to say that's what the both of them need to improve on, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and it is kind of like you do need other goal scorers in your team, don't you? And I think when he picked Silva and Gundogan, everyone was like, here we go again, and a sort of reminder that Silva, Gundogan, Kovacic midfield might not be too far away when the season starts. But yeah, you just need goal scorers, or you need someone to feed Erling Haaland, who is your biggest goal scorer. But I agree with you that I think it is a positive, the goal scoring, and also I think they scored in the first 10 minutes in every game, which is a good thing, and a good thing against teams that kind of are starting off trying to stifle you from the start. So they did show that. And they scored 3. It was just
the other team scored 4.
The other team scored 4. Like, the defense was worse than the attack, I think.
Yeah, which is an excellent segue into the defense. I mean, it felt in the first half like I can't remember City having any trouble at all or any scares really in the first half, and it felt like Al-Hilal were determined to kind of play out from the back and kind of play through the City press. And then in the second half, straight away, they just went direct. A couple of passes, bang, go direct, bang, go direct, and they got in behind again and again and again. And it's the obvious way to hurt City now, isn't it? If you play direct against them, if you look to hit them with pace straight away, they look really vulnerable.
Yeah, and we've praised Ryan Ait-Nouri a lot for his starts, but he did that classic kind of left back trait of being really good when you go forward and not so good tracking back and defending, and Malcolm had a lot of joy down that right wing against him. And yeah, they were just far too open, and it felt like the City team from like the worst part of last season, where you like you say, they're a good team. Al-Hilal, a world class manager in Inzaghi, but like should be pointed out, a manager who's only been in place a couple of weeks, so it's not like he's had long to instill his ideas upon the team.
Probably 2 of their best players in Mitrovic and Aldasar.
Yeah. And yet they still had more than enough to sort of make those switches at half time and just say, yeah, take him on this way and you'll have loads of success.
Yeah.
Which is a worry, because sort of the best versions of City teams, you want teams to sort of have to play out of their skin and come up with like the perfect way to beat you. Whereas you don't want teams to have a blueprint to beat you that everyone can turn to and say, yeah, that's how we'll do it. And it kind of feels like that is still in play.
Yeah, it does. And the concern is that when something like this happens, like when they scored that first goal straight after half time, it's like, okay, we know this is coming now, but they're powerless to stop it. They conceded again a very similar goal straight afterwards. A really tight offside, denied a penalty. There could have been 3 goals in the first 15 minutes, all from fast, direct breaks. And okay, he was offside, but it was very, very marginal. It didn't feel like it was an example of a perfect. It was a good line, obviously, but those
Yeah.
decisions are so tight
Yeah.
that, you know, had he been onside, he'd have still probably got away.
Yeah.
And it, you know, it's a recurring theme, isn't it? That when something like that happens against City, they can't react at the moment. They can't change it. They can't stop the flow of suddenly kind of being exposed in that way.
No, and it was quite interesting having Gael Clichy on DAZN commentary. I feel like he's one of the best kind of pundits around Guardiola's football and Guardiola's City, but he was kind of making the point about, you know, the fullbacks have always kind of offered up chances, and like the way that they didn't offer up chances was by playing centre backs as fullbacks essentially. But now we've got we have had a proper fullback in Ryan Nouri, and then Mateus Nunes, who I don't know what we call him, but he's makeshift, yeah. But it feels like makeshift in every position because
a makeshift footballer.
He's not trusted in his own position. Who, like, you know, again was pretty good going forwards, but just like is not a right back. But then I feel like Nouri is evidence that like you can buy a specialist right back, but in Guardiola's style, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to be 50 yards up the pitch when they should be defending.
Yeah, I guess I think that. I mean, the right back has probably got to be the next area to look at. But I think what they may be missing in this defence now is kind of a Kyle Walker. Kyle Walker's recovery pace would allow you to play this high line, would bail out City time and time again because you knew he could get back. And, you know, as Guardiola said last season, he'll still be the fastest person in the room at 60, but he's not going to be playing for City at 60. He's not going to be playing for City at 36. And it feels like you take him out of there and you play Nunes, Ait-Nouri, Diaz, Gvardiol. It's a good centre-back partnership. It's not blessed with pace. Nunes, Lewis, I don't think are blessed with pace and physicality to the level that Walker was. Ait-Nouri, maybe a bit quicker, but I don't think he's rapid. It feels like you're playing a very high line with a defence that is fairly, I mean, slow's harsh. They'd obviously beat me in a race, but you know, in terms of elite level Premier League football, it's probably a more pedestrian defence, and you're kind of leaving yourself that chance to be exposed by those dangerous breaks. If they're going to sign a right back, it almost feels like they need someone finding someone of Walker's pace is hard, but someone who really brings speed to the game. Although, I mean, that's why I think Kusinov keeps getting a mention because he's the one who has that pace, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't feel like Kusinov will be the option,
no.
But it feels like he possibly should be the option. Because, like you say, he does have that pace and he can play right back a bit and would be comfortable on the right side of a three-man defence. And you just say to Ait-Nouri, you go. Three of us will stay. Diaz can move up and in when City are pushing, so it becomes a two-man defence. I think Kusinov would be a very, very good answer to City, to a lot of City's issues at the back. He just doesn't seem to be trusted for whatever reason. I don't know whether he got a yellow card, didn't he, on his only appearance. He got took off after an hour because he was on a yellow, and Pep took two people off who were on yellows against Al-Hilal. So whether he was not wanting him to get booked again, because poor Rico Lewis never got
another kick.
Never seen again. But yeah, I feel like Kusinov, like I say, I don't think he will be the answer, but it feels like he should definitely be high in the conversation because like you say, it's all very well saying sign a right back, but like it's very hard to find what you need, I would say.
Yeah, and especially if you're looking for one with that kind of pace. And as I say, I think that feels like what they're really missing in defence. Someone with that recovery pace to play a high line. Diaz and Gvardiol, I think, are great on the ball, good in duels, excellent defenders. But if you put someone like Malcolm through against them, they're not catching him.
No, but it's hard as well because, I mean, I saw Diaz got a bit of stick. And he wasn't great. But then you're like, it is July.
Yeah.
Like, it is the middle of the summer. And Diaz obviously had the Nations League as well. So he had less of a rest than everyone else. But like, Yeah, should we expect them to be like impeccable at this time of year? Probably not. If there's one time when you can sort of most allow them to make mistakes and not be at the best, you'd rather it was July rather than May or April. The shame in it, or the shame for them, I guess, is just that it was so lucrative a tournament. It was just easy money, wasn't it? I think they would have got 5 million for winning that game.
Yeah, I mean, they got 97 million for winning the tournament, and it was so winnable, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They were.
But I think they walked away with like 50 or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they would have had a winnable quarterfinal, a winnable semi-final, and then you're in the final, and anything can happen. So yeah, it was all opening up for them, and then they collapsed.
Yeah.
And collapsed as they have done a lot over the past kind of 8 months, which points towards things not being quite as solved as we thought they were.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe we'll kind of come on to what needs to happen in pre-season. But just going back to the fullbacks there, it's kind of an interesting point you make with Kusinov, because we don't really see Guardiola play two mirror images at fullback, do we? He doesn't play an attacking left back and attacking right back. At least he hasn't done for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, we did see Aït-Nouri play attacking against Al-Hilal, and then with Doku kind of play a little bit more infield and inverted.
Yeah.
But if he does play, I mean, if he's probably going to play with Doku a lot, so maybe he will be a bit more inverted. But it does feel like it gives you that option to, if there isn't the perfect right back there, you can compromise with a quicker centre half like Kusinov, who doesn't get forward.
Yeah.
And you rely on Aït-Nouri to give you the width.
Yeah. And I mean, sort of the back end of last season, you kind of had O'Reilly and Nunes staying wide, but it did feel like a sticking plaster to what was a big
playing quite
issue.
A narrow midfield.
Yeah, and you sort of feel like, if the perfect right back doesn't exist, then maybe having someone with greater defensive quality, especially like you say, that recovery pace, is kind of better than having two defenders who aren't 2 out of 4 who aren't great defensively, but are good going forward kind of thing. Because I don't think they will struggle for going forward, but I think they will struggle. The other thing I would say is that it kind of like just shows how important that Rodri role is, that Rodri position for protecting the midfield, because they, what was it, a coincidence that against Juventus Rodri played and they looked so much better. You really do need someone to shield the defence, and it looked like they had no shields and no weapons and no sort of defensive equipment in that second half, because Al-Hilal just kept going through them.
Yeah. Another player who's probably got a bit of stick since the Al-Hilal game is Ederson. And as much as we're talking about right back, I think pretty much every position has had some kind of refresh over the last couple of years. Maybe not exact position, but in terms of defence, midfield, attack.
Yeah.
Got 3 goalkeepers now who are 31 and over. I think the long-term answer clearly doesn't lie with any of them. I mean, Ederson came pretty close to leaving last year. Seems he's going to stay this year. Ortega seems he's going to stay as well. But it's got to be a position that's high on Hugo Viana's watch list, hasn't it? Because the time when City needed a new number one is probably next year at most. And arguably next year they're going to need a new number 2. There's potentially even an argument that you sign a younger goalkeeper this summer to try and put pressure on Ederson and Ortega goes.
Yeah. And again, the issue is, how do you find another Ederson? Because he is so unique in what he brings to the team and everything like that. But you would also argue that there is a player who has, first-hand knowledge of playing with Ederson and training with Ederson, and is available this summer, but looks like he's going to Newcastle in James Trafford. Who City have a buyback option for, I know a few supporters at least are sort of interested in the idea of buying Trafford this summer and saying, you take that number 1 off Ederson this year if you want, and it'll be yours next year or whatever. Because he said he only wanted to come back to City as number 1, but he's always spoke very, very highly of City. But if he goes to Newcastle this summer, then he's probably off the market. Then, you know, if City turn around next summer and say, we need a new number 1, then you're looking at sort of double the price at least if you want to buy, and Newcastle aren't going to be willing to sell because they'll have only had him for a year and he's kind of Nick Pope's replacement there. So it's a sticky one. And another one where Ederson has said, I want to stay. I might have wanted to leave last year, but I want to stay this year. And everyone said, oh, great. Oh, fantastic. And then he's had a shocker of a tournament, really. You know, there was a lot of stuff after the Al-Hilal game that was like over the top and just not nice, really. Like, I saw his wife had sort of taken to limiting comments on social media because some of the abuse she was getting and he was getting, which is just unacceptable. But he did not have a good tournament, and whenever he doesn't play well, it does open up that kind of, not wound, but, you know, problem that City find themselves in. But I think Ederson's going to be harder to replace than pretty much any player they've had.
I think he is so unique, isn't he? But he's unique with his feet more than anything, because you know, I don't think it's any secret that his shot stopping is probably not, well, it's certainly not his super strength. It's maybe mid-table in terms of Premier League level. If you just want someone to keep the ball out of the net, there's better goalkeepers there. Yeah. But you need a lot more than that at the highest level now, depending on how your teams play.
Yeah, and I've not seen another goalkeeper in the league come close to doing what Ederson can do with his feet. Like, even when he was playing poorly in the Club World Cup, like, the balls he was playing direct for Haaland and things like that were just on another level. Like, he's got more assists than any keeper in Premier League history. He got 4 last season, like one season alone, and he's got 4. Like, nobody else is coming close to that. So how do you replace that? I don't think you can. I think you just have to kind of accept, try and get someone who's, you know, look at like Andre Onana was really good in the Champions League final. Sorry, maybe he's the next Ederson, and then no, actually he's not. So it's really, really hard, and they have looked at goalkeepers this summer, the one from Porto and a few others and things like that, and they, at the minute, they're very happy that Ederson's staying, which I think tells its own tale.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of positives from the tournament, then the new signings all seem to settle in, all showed themselves pretty well, didn't they?
Yeah. Reinder's probably the most impressive, but Cherky had some. I mean, his ball for Foden for the 3rd goal against Al-Hilal was very, very good. And yeah, Aït-Nouri did pretty well. So I think they were as good as could be hoped for. Really, their impact. It's just going to be hoped that they kind of can look as comfortable when the Premier League starts.
Yeah. The other player that seemed, well, I think he did have a really good tournament, was Phil Foden. But the better he played, the less he seemed to play. I mean, it still feels to me like a bit of a strange one with Foden. Obviously, I mean, he seemed a lot, it's kind of inferring from on-pitch body language, but he seemed a bit happier within himself, seemed to be enjoying his football more, did really well in that first game, made an impact as a sub after that, but went from starting to playing 45 minutes, I think, in the second game, 25 in the third, 20 in the fourth when he came on after 100 minutes.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there's still kind of that question of where does he play? Where does he fit? Because I just thought it was strange that he didn't seem to be in the strongest team by the end of the tournament, given how well he played.
Yeah, I thought it was especially strange against Al-Hilal, just because he seemed to be doing a really extensive warm-up at half-time. I thought he was coming on at half-time, and then he wasn't, and then
Like the
he wasn't
last
on
sub.
until
Yeah.
extra time. But yeah, he looked a lot happier, and when he came on the pitch, he was making things happen, which he just didn't do last season. You know, it was back more to the year before last when he was influencing games, and it felt like whenever he was on the pitch, he made things happen. So yeah, I think Foden probably had one of the best tournaments out of anyone. But like you say, he just kind of didn't start as many games as expected. And same with Cherky, really. You know, it wasn't great when he started his first game, but then every appearance since he scored or assisted and was very good. But yeah, it felt like they were being held back a bit.
Yeah. There seemed to be a real desire to play Savinho and Doku together quite a lot, didn't there? When and maybe if you're playing those two, I mean, certainly if you're playing those two, Foden and Cherky aren't starting, and it seemed often that neither were starting. It kind of felt like he wanted to play Savinho and Doku as a pair in a lot of games, and I don't know, maybe road test and see if that's the wingers he wants next season.
Yeah, maybe. It also kind of, both Foden and Cherky want to play in the middle, and there was obviously kind of a desire to give Rodri minutes and get him back in the team and starting and things like that, and also see what Reinders could do. And then you've got Silk, the captain, and Gundogan as well. So maybe they got squeezed a bit in the middle, but there was I found it interesting that Savinho and Doku's kind of started and played as much as they did. I think Savinho played the most out of anyone other than Ederson. So like, you wouldn't necessarily come away from the tournament thinking it, but he did.
Yeah. And I mean, the interesting one there is Silva, because I think we all see now Rodri and Reinders as guaranteed in midfield.
Yeah.
Leaves a third role. Silva is the captain. All right, the club captain at City doesn't necessarily start every week. But it certainly suggests he's going to start more games than he's not. And that, like I say, that creates a real squeeze out wide when you've got Doku, Savinho, Foden, Cherky. It's great to have that strength in depth, isn't it? But it does feel a little bit like we don't really know like who's going to fit in where yet. Those first few selections in the Premier League might be really interesting.
Yeah, Silva's more functional, isn't he, than creative.
Yeah.
You kind of, if it's a Silva, Rodri, Reinders midfield, say, and there's question marks over Savinho and Doku. There's question marks over Foden after last season. There's question over Cherky coming to a new league. You got Marmoush, who maybe has to fit in with Haaland as well. Like you say, it's really both kind of tight, but also doubts exist over that kind of creativity that you're going to be relying on. And the more kind of functionality you have behind it, the less room you have for creativity. So, I thought Silva had a pretty good tournament, but also like whenever I see him positioned out on the right wing, I sort of think they're not really going to score any goals from here, are they?
No.
Like, you don't want Bernardo Silva as your right winger when you have those other options that can play there. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how much he plays. But then also, like, Rodri came off with an injury, didn't he, had been complaining of injury against Al-Hilal. So you still wonder whether Silva's like the Rodri backstop that can slot in when Rodri needs to rest.
Not there. Yeah, definitely. The one, I guess, benefit of being knocked out is that now they've got a pretty decent summer break. 4 weeks off and then 3 weeks on pre-season. Like we say, it's definitely an advantage, isn't it, now, the fact they've got these 2 extra weeks. Had they gone all the way to the final, you'd have probably been looking at maybe 3 weeks off, 2 weeks on to prepare for the season. Even Guardiola admitted last week that there's a chance that they were going to fall apart, essentially, because no one, that's the issue with this competition, no one's got any data to how it's going to affect you because it's never happened before. So we're all in the dark. Even the sports scientists are fairly in the dark. It kind of takes that excuse away from City now, and they've got 3 weeks is a pretty decent block building into the season when they've only had 4 off. Probably worth fitting a couple of friendlies in if they're behind closed doors into that, but it does at least feel like they should be in a better position now come August the 16th.
Yeah, I think so. And there was obviously Nations League at the end of the season, so some players really didn't have much time off at all. Whereas there isn't that now, so they can properly switch off and do their own thing. And they should also be kind of smarting from going out of the last 16 to a Saudi team. Like that's the thing. They were angry at the second half of last season because people had written them off or been critical of them, and the mantra was, we're going to prove you wrong. And then they went to the Club World Cup and they've not proven anyone wrong. No. Like, are they capable of winning major trophies? There's not the evidence for it from the Club World Cup, because still winning major trophies, I suppose, because they won a lot of major trophies. But like, can they still do it? The Club World Cup was just not. So they will go into the Premier League needing to answer that question again, and they should have that motivation and that hunger, but they will be better placed to use that if they've had a proper rest.
Yeah, definitely. And now the focus is probably going to go back from the football to the transfers. There's still about 8 weeks of the window left. I think it's incredibly long summer.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we expecting? I guess right back is the priority in incomings, and there's got to be a lot of outgoings now, hasn't there?
Yeah, they're looking at right back, but as we've discussed, it's finding the right player to do that. And then the outgoings looks messy. Like, it looks like it's going to be a big job to get rid of all the players they need to get rid of, because you need to get rid of Walker and Grealish and Phillips. Phillips is injured. And then you need to get rid of players who don't want to leave, really. And yeah, that's what Hugo Viana's paid the big bucks for.
Be a hell of a job if Guardiola has got the squad size he wants come the start of September, probably, wouldn't it? Because, like you say, it feels hard to rustle up a market for all of those players, and to maybe get rid of three who are fairly settled and insistent they don't want to go.
But then I think they've got 4 too many foreign players for the Champions League squad. So they need to get rid of a good few.
Yeah.
It's going to be very interesting.
It is going to be very interesting, and we'll be back on a regular basis to discuss all the latest transfer developments and whatever else might be happening in City's world. But for now, that's the final Club World Cup podcast. We can put that, whatever it was, to bed. That tournament to bed. Si, thank you for your time.
It passed some time, didn't it?
It did pass some time. Kept us busy, didn't it?
Yeah.
It's better than what we normally have to do in June, it's fair to say. So maybe they should play it every year.
Yeah.
Right, that's all for now. Please remember to leave us a review, a like if you've enjoyed it, subscribe to get the latest episodes of Talking City in your podcast feed, and we'll be back next week.